Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 421 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. Qin Mu nodded with a faint smile. 5 years ago, Xing'an took out Celestial Venerable Qin's token to trick him to Fallen God Valley. It was merely a way to the High Emperor Celestial Heavens, where Celestial Venerable Ling's disciple, Yi Shixing, kept on trying to recover Celestial Venerable Ling's corpse. When Qin Mu arrived, Celestial Emperor's disciples, such as Yang Qiling and Mu Qiubai, were there too. Dragon King Tian, under Mother Earth, was also there, along with a divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu who snuck in. The floating coffin in the valley had the words, "Open when Qin Mu is here" on it. It meant that it would open when it came into contact with Celestial Venerable Mu and Celestial Venerable Qin. At the time, Qin Mu thought it was strange that when he didn't go to Fallen God Valley, no one went to explore it. However, when he did, everyone went there with him. It was too coincidental. Now, it seemed that the ancient Celestial Emperor and the Grand Emperor's plot failed. Of course, Mother Earth was also involved. 5 years ago, Qin Mu couldn't understand their scheme. Today, he understood what happened there 5 years ago. Celestial Emperor, the Grand Emperor, and Mother Earth knew that it was only when they got both Celestial Venerable Qin and Celestial Venerable Mu's tokens that they could open the passageway in Fallen God Valley. Thus, they waited for Qin Mu's arrival so they could enter. Despite their slyness, they failed to predict that the Grand Emperor's divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu would be eliminated by Qin Mu, and that Xing'an would suppress and seal the Celestial Venerable's consciousness within it. Ultimately, Xing'an took the divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu and ran away with it. The people under Mother Earth died, while most of the ancient Celestial Emperor's disciples died as well, except for Yang Qiling. Mother Earth suffered heavy losses, while Celestial Emperor couldn't find his corporeal body. As for the Grand Emperor, not only was he unable to verify the death of Celestial Venerable Ling, he wasn't able to take back the consciousness he used to control Celestial Emperor's corporeal body. Qin Mu got nothing out of it either. Only Xing'an got the divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu and suppressed the Grand Emperor's consciousness within it. The big winner of that battle seemed to be Xing'an. However, fate made a fool of everyone. After Xing'an got the divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu and occupied the corporeal body, he wasted 5 years of his life on the great Tao runes of the ancient gods. Meanwhile, he failed to refine the most valuable prize, the Grand Emperor's consciousness, which now fell into Qin Mu's hands. Qin Mu looked at the jade bottle with a smile on his face that gradually grew. He ended up laughing loudly. 5 years ago, who would have thought that I would be the ultimate winner? He laughed as vital chi and consciousness danced around him. They manifested themselves into all sorts of runes that Qin Mu adjusted. He then retrieved all sorts of calculations, spirit weapons, and recalculated again and again to modify the runes. Divine King Lang Wo watched him and got excited. Holy Infant, do you need me to help you refine the Grand Emperor's consciousness? The bit in the jade bottle is weak, and it would be easy to refine. Not now. Qin Mu was fully concentrated on his calculations, not lifting his head once. He replied, "Once I'm finished perfecting this divine art, then I will trouble you." Divine King Lang Wo examined the runes that his consciousness and vital chi conjured up. They were marvelous and complicated, which made her unable to comprehend them. Xu Jun couldn't understand them either, so he asked the Dragon Qiling about it. The Dragon Qiling glanced at it and said, "Cult Master is modifying the Soul Guide divine art. Soul Guide is used to lead and guide souls. Judging from his modified runes, he aims to get it to guide consciousnesses instead of souls." Guide consciousnesses. Divine King Xu Jun and Divine King Lang Wo were perplexed. There were divine arts that could guide consciousnesses. The Dragon Qiling thought about it and said, Soul guide should actually be called soul acquisition, as one can acquire souls from Yudu and summon them to the world of the living. After Cult Master's improvements, it can even summon broken souls. Cult Master likely intends to modify it so it can summon the consciousness that Grand Emperor scattered in the primordial realm. After a while, Qin Mu finally completed his calculations. Everyone appeared bewildered as they looked at the magnificent runes spread across the interior of the carriage. Qin Mu examined it carefully and modified several calculation errors before he felt pleased. Qin Mu retrieved the bottle, got out of the carriage, and placed it on the level ground of the fallen god valley. His magic power almost went berserk as he utilized the modified soul guide. Countless runes flew around and orbited the jade bottle. His primordial spirit appeared, standing on the main celestial palace of the Taiji diagram imposingly. Beneath the southern heavenly gate, dense Dao language came from him as he read all sorts of secretive Yudu languages. Countless heavenly yin world runes lit up around him. Some were bright while some were dark. The Grand Emperor wants to kill me now, while I'm here. Thus, he mobilized the corporeal body of the 11th Celestial Venerable. But he met Founding Emperor on the way and was killed. After Qin Mu's primordial spirit utilized the improved soul guide, Qin Mu laughed. When the Grand Emperor was defeated by Founding Emperor didn't know how to gather his consciousness, so he eliminated him, causing his consciousness to be scattered. Previously, I had no objects belonging to him, so I couldn't summon his soul. But now that I have his consciousness in this bottle, I can try summoning his scattered consciousness. Divine King Lang Wo followed him to the plain, and saw how the ground around Qin Mu had countless runes imprinted on it. They lit up and spread in all directions, covering more and more ground. Soon, those runes covered an area with a radius of 100 miles, forming a large formation. Divine King Lang Wo thought about it and said, even if Founding Emperor scattered the Grand Emperor consciousness that was in the Celestial Venerable's corpse, it will coalesce again. He has likely retrieved his consciousness. Sister Divine King, relax. Founding Emperor unleashed the 20th sword form and the 34 heavens of the sword path to kill him. Thus, his consciousness can't coalesce in a short time. Besides, Qin Mu's primordial spirit fully activated soul guide, and countless magnificent runes orbited around the jade bottle. The runes imprinted themselves on the bottle one by one. One ringing wave after another was transmitted into the jade bottle before they spread out within it. After that, they spread out from it in a marvelous rhythm. Normal people couldn't sense such a rhythm. Even Divine King Lang Wo and Divine King Shu Jun could barely catch it. Besides, since he's here to kill me, why would he retrieve his consciousness so easily? Qin Mu became visibly nervous as he solemnly said, his consciousness must not have left the primordial realm. Instead, it would be on the gods and devils here to continue tracking me down. Divine Kings, I'm about to establish a connection with the Grand Emperor. Are you two ready? Divine King Lang Wo hastily utilized her consciousness. Her consciousness was unbelievably strong, and it instantly spread across the 35 voids, and formed all sorts of divine arts forged from all sorts of consciousnesses. Shu Jun hesitated and said, Holy Infant, how strong is his consciousness? If we plot against him, we will have offended him fully. Besides, his consciousness web is hidden in the ultimate void. If we summon his consciousness, he can lock onto our position and attack us from the ultimate void. Divine King Shu Jun, I've already offended the Grand Emperor greatly. Doing it again is just icing on the cake. Qin Mu's soul guide established a connection with the consciousness in the jade bottle. He instantly traced the source and felt wave after wave of terrifying consciousness. He laughed and said, the Grand Emperor's consciousness will be summoned by me. We shall scheme against the one that's not scheming. After that, we'll run so he can't do anything to us. Divine King Shujun instantly felt his hair rise when he felt the terrifying waves of the void. He decided to use all of his consciousness and help Divine King Lang Wo put down the Great Void refining formation. He hadn't recovered to his peak condition, but his experience stuck around, allowing him to help Divine King Lang Wo with some of her weaknesses in refining divine arts. Divine King Lang Wo, we have to seal the 35th void to prevent the Grand Emperor from coming down from the ultimate void. Divine King Shujun said to Divine King Lang Wo, as they worked together to seal the 35th void around them. Divine King Lang Wo praised him. Although Shujun was a divine king of the primordial era, and thus only had largely outdated knowledge, his experience was vast and unique. Just as they finished setting up the Great Void refining formation in the 35th void, terrifying waves responded to Qin Mu's soul guide and were summoned. At the source of the primordial realm's surging river, the Grand Emperor's celestial venerable corpse, which had been cut into pieces, fell into a body of water in the mountains. His coffin fell into a cave and opened, and thick corpse air came from within. At the same time, many weirdly dressed gods arrived. They had white robes that covered their bodies and faces. They came from the celestial heavens, and each one of them carried a cinnabar-colored gourd on their backs. The white-robed gods each went to a piece of the corpse, and steaming light came from the gourds to extract the consciousness within. Those corpse pieces still contained founding emperor's sword path. It was suppressed by the Grand Emperor's consciousness, but it continuously ground the consciousness. After a long while, the Grand Emperor's consciousness would be completely ground away by founding emperor's sword path. However, the cinnabar-colored gourds of the white-robed gods had something unique about them. They could extract the Grand Emperor's consciousness without touching the power of founding emperor's sword path. Even then, they had to be careful to not touch the corpse pieces in order to prevent inciting founding emperor's divine arts. They were just about to finish collecting it when suddenly, an unknown force came and took away all of the Grand Emperor's consciousness with it. Even the consciousness collected into the gourds was led away, with light coming from the mouth of the gourds. The consciousness became thousands of beautiful lights that ran away. Crap! The Grand Emperor's consciousness rumbled like thousands of bolts of lightning as it boomed, causing those white-robed gods to grow dizzy. Quickly seal the divine gourds of consciousness. The white-robed gods immediately capped the gourds, yet that peculiar summon was too strong, going as far as to pull the divine gourds of consciousness towards the east as well. The Grand Emperor's consciousness also flew out uncontrollably from those celestial venerable corpse pieces, being led by Qin Mu's soul guide. Many white-robed gods hugged their large gourds and utilized magic power to stay put. Regardless, many divine gourds of consciousness flew away. Useless things. Suddenly, the consciousness in one of them flew out and went into the body of a white-robed god. After his body was borrowed by the Grand Emperor, he too flew towards the east, as it was led by Qin Mu's soul guide too. At the same time, the other gourds exploded, and the Grand Emperor consciousness within flew out and went into the bodies of the white-robed gods. Only one of the white-robed gods was a true god, and he struggled against Qin Mu's summon, as he was pulled flying towards Fallen God Valley. Fallen God Valley was far from there, but at that rate, it would only take a short time before he was pulled there and refined by Qin Mu. Little brat, you think you can take away my consciousness? You think too little of me. That white-robed god was furious, and he used all of his power to utilize the corporeal body's magical power, wanting to push his corporeal body down. Nevertheless, he was still led towards the east. A god city appeared in front. It was the staging ground of the army of the celestial heavens in the primordial realm. That white-robed god's eyes flashed as he opened his mouth. Light came out of it like a torrent from a waterfall and headed towards that god city. The rainbow light howled as it swept across the city. The thousands of gods and devils were drowned by the light before they could react. Like thousands of tentacles, rays of light drilled into the orifices of the gods and devils. Instantly, all of them were led by the soul guide, flying towards fallen God Valley. The general in charge of the city was an expert of the numinous sky realm, and he immediately utilized his divine arts. However, it was of no use. The Grand Emperor flew with thousands of gods and devils that he controlled, and they crisscrossed in the air to form a grand killing formation. The sight was grand and shuddering. Celestial Venerable Mu, you have provoked me again and again. Today I will let you see the power of the ruler of the distant past. Tens of thousands of gods and devils flew towards fallen God Valley. They transformed into rays of light in the air, making it appear as though tens of thousands of comets were cutting across the sky of the primordial realm. The formation of these gods and devils continued to undergo countless changes in mid-air. As the most ancient existence in the present-day world, the knowledge Grand Emperor Juyusha possessed was incomparably deep. Every formation was at his fingertips, ever-changing and full of marvels. He hadn't been so mad in a long time. There weren't many things that could truly infuriate him. He was angered when Celestial Venerable Yun, together with the race of masters of creation of the Great Void, ambushed and trapped his corporeal body. When his own divine arts were broken through by the unchanging substance divine art created by Celestial Venerable Ling, he was angered. He deeply understood the damage this frightening divine art could do to him. If he didn't get rid of Celestial Venerable Ling, he would have died at her hands sooner or later. For the last 1,000,000 years, he was only angered by these two matters. However, he was angered now. Back when the primordial realm broke its seal, he mobilized the divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu personally, but was killed by the rascal Qin Mu at Fallen God Valley. Although one could say he didn't display his true abilities, because he didn't wish to reveal his identity, he was still unhappy dying at the hands of the little rascal. Also, at the Jade Pool in the celestial heavens, the little rascal actually removed the bloodline curse that he left in Yun Jinli's bloodline. This definitely infuriated him. Not only that, but Qin Mu ventured deep into the Great Void and took Celestial Venerable Yun's corpse from the Supreme Consciousness realm. He even refined a part of his own consciousness, trying to explore the secrets and marvels of his technique. Moreover, after the little rascal returned to the celestial heavens, he told the other celestial venerables that the Grand Emperor wasn't dead, and that he was hidden among them. This had forced him to go into a passive state. When he came forth to kill him, he was killed by founding Emperor midway. It was a wrongful and baffling death. Now, Qin Mu had returned to Fallen God Valley and was planning to summon his consciousness and refine it again. Even if one was to shear a sheep, he couldn't keep on shearing one particular sheep. It seemed that the little rascal had a bone to pick with him, always chasing after him and shearing non-stop. He was unable to tolerate the little rascal any longer. Today, he would get rid of Qin Mu no matter what. Ignorant little life form, I have traversed the universe and seen countless talented figures, as many as the stars in the sky. One by one, they fell, leaving only me. The tens of thousands of gods and devils flew across the sky, charging towards Fallen God Valley. They descended into a violent tremble, transforming into a majestic loud voice. You aren't worthy of being my enemy. During my long lifespan, the enemies that I met were much stronger and smarter than you. You're just an ant that I can easily kill. My lifespan started from the ancient primordial era and lasted until now. I'm the universe's oldest life form, a legend that cannot be defeated. My history is like a long river of time. In Fallen God Valley, Qin Mu looked towards the west. Rays of dazzling light gushed forth like strong waves. The voice transformed from the consciousness of the Grand Emperor was already ringing in his ears, its deafening force splitting heaven and earth. You are just an insignificant figure in my life and my long river of time. In my eyes, you are just a single drop of water, not amounting to even a ripple. Within the great sea of dazzling light, Qin Mu saw the figures of tens of thousands of gods and devils. That was the celestial heaven's most profound and mysterious killing formation. Its killing aura covered the entire sky, charging forth with a whoosh. Before it reached Fallen God Valley, the ground began to crack open. Pieces of earth loosened and crumbled under the terrifying pressure, floating up in the air. That surge of God aura charged over, engulfing heaven and earth. The sky looked like glass that had been smashed into pieces, while the earth completely disappeared. The soil and rocks floating in the air were ceaselessly pulverized into nothingness. Now, only the ground beneath Qin Mu's feet was whole, and the sky above his head was unadulterated, seemingly untouched by that killing formation. Tens of thousands of gods and devils rushed over, shouting in unison. Their voices transformed into an earth-shattering roar. The so-called Celestial Venerable Mu, and the so-called 10 Celestial Venerables are all mediocre. Before that voice landed, Divine King Lang Wo suddenly raised her palm, and removed the willow leaf at the heart of her brows, revealing the hexagon-shaped vertical eye. She crossed her hands as her consciousness divine art exploded. In an instant, her consciousness swept across the void. As it passed, the tens of thousands of gods and devils immediately fell from the sky, dropping into Fallen God Valley, which had been transformed into an abyss. Even for the numinous Sky Realm God General, the Grand Emperor's consciousness in his head was forced out of his body as he fell. As Divine King Lang Wo clasped her hands together, the abyss instantly disappeared. Under her visualization, the earth speedily grew, filling up the abyss. Even the chaotic shattered sky around them was restored to its initial state within the blink of an eye. Divine King Shu Jun bellowed and mobilized the seals that were hidden in the 35 voids. The seals were jointly laid down by him and Divine King Lang Wo. With his current consciousness cultivation, he was unable to handle a frightening existence like Grand Emperor Ju Yusha. However, he had sufficient experience while Divine King Lang Wo had a terrifying level of cultivation. The consciousness of the Grand Emperor, upon seeing Divine King Lang Wo's attack, immediately came to a realization. His terrifying consciousness trembled like waves, trying its best to coagulate so as to resist Qin Mu's soul guide. Ultimately, it proved too difficult to resist Qin Mu's divine art, and his consciousness was sucked into the jade bottle beside Qin Mu's feet. Right at this moment, the seals of the 35 voids activated. Starting from the 35th void, the seal leaped to the 34th void, merging it with the seal there. After that, the merged seal leaped to the 33rd void. Although the merging of the seals of the many layers of voids sounded slow, in reality, it was pretty quick. Within a split second, the merged seals had reached the first void, which was the primordial realm where Qin Mu and the rest were. The consciousness of the Grand Emperor had already been subdued by the seals, and was being forced into the jade bottle. When all of the Grand Emperor's consciousness was sucked into the jade bottle, the 35 circular seals rotated around the bottle, sealing every inch of the bottle's surface, leaving no gaps. So it was you. The jade bottle trembled as the furious voice of the Grand Emperor traveled over. I recognize you, the girl that ambushed me together with Celestial Venerable Yun, the master of creation of the Great Void. And also you, Divine King Shu Jun. Divine King Shu Jun laughed heartily. Ju Yusha, it has been a long time since we met. Back then, you beat me into a miserable state. Now, you're in the bottle while I'm outside. The Grand Emperor roared angrily, Shu Jun, as a divine king of the masters of creation, you have colluded with outsiders and ambushed me with the human race. And you, girl, despite being the leader of the masters of creation, have schemed against me twice, ambushing the Grand Emperor of the masters of creation race. Divine King Lang Wo plainly said, you destroyed the race of masters of creation, and haven't been our Grand Emperor for a long time. Ju Yusha, we are just collecting some interest from you today. Shu Jun had an anxious expression as he hurriedly said, "Stop making idle talk with him. Watch the 35th void carefully, in case it is attacked by his great overarching consciousness heaven." Qin Mu dissolved the soul guide and picked up the jade bottle. It was jumping around his palm, as though it was trying to break free and leap through the air. It was good that Divine King Lang Wo and Divine King Shu Jun's seals were around. Because of the seals, the force emitted from the bottle wasn't too powerful. The bottle remained in his palm. Shu Jun and Divine King Lang Wo both sat in a lotus position. The heart of their brows repeatedly gave off light rays that looked like twisted bubbles. They ventured deep into the void, preparing to jointly seal the 35th void in order to stop the Grand Emperor's great overarching consciousness heaven. There was an in-depth description of the void in the wisdom imparted by the Masters of Creation of the Ancestor Spirit World to Qin Mu. During the ancient primordial era, which the Masters of Creation lived in, souls weren't important. What was important was consciousness. In particular, how to protect one's consciousness was extremely important. When consciousness was deposited within the void, one could merge with heaven and earth, hence prolonging one's life. The Masters of Creation used consciousness to create things. To them, any places in which they could create things or deposit their consciousness were considered voids. Hence, the real universe was naturally the first void. After breaking through the first void, one's consciousness would reach another illusory level. That was the second void. If one was able to create things in the second void, they could try to break through to reach the third void. The third void was more illusory, vague, and insubstantial. So on and so forth, void after void was founded by the Masters of Creation. The deeper one ventured into the void, the longer one's consciousness was preserved. However, within the wisdom of the Ancestor Spirit World, there were only 35 voids. There were no records of the 36th void, which was the ultimate void. Actually, when one attained the 35th void, their consciousness would live as long as heaven and earth and would be immortal. One would enjoy eternal tranquility there, only dying if the universe was destroyed. However, during the ancient primordial era, there were Masters of Creation who were able to reach the 35th void, refining the consciousness of others who had deposited their consciousness there, using it to kill their enemies. Hence, depositing one's consciousness in the void wasn't entirely safe. Qin Mu had only heard of the 36th void, the ultimate void, from Shu Jun. However, he didn't know much about it. Given his current consciousness cultivation, it would be considered decent if he could reach the 10th void. The Grand Emperor was the only one who could reach the 36th void. The consciousness that he deposited there was refined into the great overarching consciousness heaven. Since the ancient primordial era, he had witnessed and survived countless calamities. One could see how powerful this ultimate void was. In the future, when my consciousness has been cultivated to the level of the Grand Emperor, I will definitely make a trip to the ultimate void. However, for now. Qin Mu put away the jade bottle and shouted, "Ju Qian, start the carriage and get ready to flee." In the distance, Ju Qian Devil King immediately woke up the 9 heavenly dragons and rushed the heavenly dragon treasure carriage over as swift as the wind. Qin Mu picked up the unmoving bodies of Shu Jun and Divine King Lang Wo and hopped onto the carriage. He said solemnly, "Run as fast as you can. Try to shake off the great overarching consciousness heaven." Ju Qian Devil King bellowed as he raised his whip to lash at the 9 heavenly dragons. Upon feeling pain, the 9 dragons galloped forward at full speed, moving as quick as lightning. Ju Qian Devil King continued to lash with his whip until one of the heavenly dragons couldn't tolerate any longer. It turned its head and said, "Fellow, stop lashing. We're not beasts that are unable to understand what you are saying. You can simply tell us to gallop with our full might, and we will obey. Is there a need to lash us so severely?" Ju Qian Devil King got a fright. He quickly put away the whip and kept quiet. The heavenly dragon treasure carriage was moving faster and faster. On the carriage, Qin Mu saw that the foreheads of Divine King Shu Jun and Divine King Lang Wo were covered with cold sweat. The light rays of consciousness that were gushing out of the hexagon-shaped vertical eyes at the hearts of their brows were getting thicker. They had reached the 35th void. They looked as though they were under extreme pressure. Clearly, the incensed Grand Emperor was locking onto them tightly. He was still able to find them despite the fact that the heavenly dragon treasure carriage had left their prior location. Qin Mu frowned as he said, "Ju Qian, can this treasure carriage enter Yudu? Bring them to Yudu." Ju Qian Devil King quickly passed down the order. He heard a loud bang as the treasure carriage penetrated Yudu. Their surroundings suddenly turned dark as thunder rumbled around the 9 heavenly dragons while they pulled the treasure carriage in the darkness at full speed. The 2 divine kings, Shu Jun and Lang Wo, suddenly looked like they were relieved of a huge burden and woke up one after another. What a close shave! Divine King Lang Wo wiped off the cold sweat on her forehead and praised, "The Grand Emperor is indeed extraordinary, pressuring us until we are breathless. However, I have made use of this opportunity to discover the ultimate void." Qin Mu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that both of them were fine. Shu Jun looked around, his expression changing slightly as he asked, "Holy Infant, what is this place?" Divine King Lang Wo also surveyed the surroundings. Her expression changed drastically as she said with a trembling voice, "Could this be Yudu?" In front of the heavenly dragon treasure carriage, 2 long streams of blazing yellow springs descended from the sky. Those were the 2 horns of Earth Count, formed by countless annihilated worlds. The water of the yellow springs was flaming lava. In front of this colossal ancient god floated the divine weapon Celestial Venerable Yu. Although he was only a tenth of Earth Count's true body, he was nevertheless extremely huge, immeasurable. "Quickly, go!" Shu Jun shouted, "Earth Count and us, the masters of creation, were sworn enemies." Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He was about to get Ju Qian, Devil King, to turn the carriage around to leave Yudu, when he saw the imposing Earth Count slowly turning his head, looking over with his 3 eyes. Cold sweat appeared on Divine King Lang Wo's forehead again. She flew out and threw herself in front of the heavenly dragon treasure carriage. "Holy Infant, you have promised me that you will take good care of the masters of creation race. Don't forget your promise," she said without turning back. "Leave without me." Suddenly, Qin Mu appeared in front of her. He made a stroke with his hand and opened a gate of heaven influence. Earth Count's gaze swept over, disintegrating the gate of heaven influence. Veins were popping out on Qin Mu's forehead. He roused his vital qi to open another gate of heaven influence, but it was disintegrated once again. "It's useless." Shu Jun sighed and moved to Qin Mu's side. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Divine King Lang Wo, shaking his head as he said, "The masters of creation and ancient gods are natural enemies. Back then, when the ancient gods were killing us, Earth Count was one of their leaders. He won't let us off. Holy Infant, Lang Wo, leave without me. I'll stay back and handle this." Qin Mu gave a snort and tried to open the gate of heaven influence again. Earth Count seemed a little furious. He turned his head and refused to look at them. Divine King Lang Wo and Shu Jun were stunned. They wondered why Earth Count didn't make a move to kill them. Qin Mu heaved a sigh of relief. He whispered, "Earth Count gave me some face and pretended not to see us. Let's quickly leave." Part 421 end here. Thank you for watching.